If I could, let me get your attention. I've got 1 o'clock, so I'd like to call this meeting to order of the joint Senate and House Education Committee meeting. First of all, let me welcome all the visitors in the room today. If you do this for me, visitors, those that have been in a classroom or teachers, administrators, school personnel, hold your hand up for a minute. Y'all give them a hand. I tell you what, I appreciate your service. Thank you, educators. I mentioned this morning to a group of young people that teachers are heroes to me. Every single day, you're out there responding to the needs of those kids. And in a lot of cases, you're the first responder. So thank you. Thank you for that passion, what you do also. As I said, we've got a joint meeting here. Chairman Hickman, you want to say something?
Well, thank you, and I'm so happy to be here with Chairman Irwin and the House Committee. You know, we're all working together on this. We all got issues together, and we're all trying to get it all solved. And thank you, Mr. Speaker, for being here today also. So, as you know, we've in the Senate, we've charged our senators that literacy and safety are the priorities of our session. And I know Chairman Irwin has charged the House also. I'm looking forward to working together with y'all and working forward to get some great things done for the students in Georgia. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. And as we like to do, let's open this meeting in prayer if we can. Vice Chair Rice, would you push your number, and I will ask you to. There you go.
Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for this day. I thank you for a room full of people that's hearts are passionate about the future of our great state and every student knowing that they are our future. And Lord, I pray that you would be over us not only today but in the session. I pray that you would bless the work and the conversations that are had. Please give us discernment. Please help us to be able to all work together for the for literacy and for our school safety. And I pray that you would protect each teacher, administrator, and child in our school system, and that you would bless the work that we do today. In your name I pray. Amen.
Great. Thank you, Vice Chair, for that message. Let me mention, as Chairman Hickman stated to us there, our goal, committee members, safety number 1, literacy number 2, and only great policy number 3. We've been doing that for the last couple of years. I think we've really moved the needle on all 3 of those, but especially with safety and literacy. We're going to continue that safety talk and begin with that safety talk. We are blessed to have our Speaker of the House in the room, and he is asked to speak to us to show his passion and desire for this topic that we are beginning today. So, Mr. Speaker, if you would, do you mind sitting right here in the front? It kind of felt good to do that. I don't get to do that, but one time in my life, I guess, might be the way to say it. But we'll turn the microphone over to you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, we welcome these senators to the House, and it's always good to be with our counterparts from the other side of the building. I can't tell you, Mr. Chairman Irwin, I just want to tell you how proud I am of my dear friend, my Senator Chairman Hickman. He's worked on these issues for some time now, and he's recognized as an expert and as a leader, but more importantly, a lot of passion and commitment. So to my friend Billy, thank you. I appreciate what you're doing, and if I heard it correctly, Mr. Chairman Irwin, I think he said he's going to be a part of this discussion. He's going to work out all the details in the House, and he'll just rubber stamp it when it goes over to the Senate, right? That'd be excellent. That'd be excellent. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to come by, Mr. Chairman. And Vice Chairman Rice, thank you for your commitment to education in your career and what you've been a part of in Columbus and Muskogee County to make sure that young people are taken care of over there. So thank you for that. Chairman Hilton, You've also had a little space in this discussion over the years too as well. So from a standpoint of a grandfather who has children in school, young grandchildren in school, I appreciate that. And certainly as a Georgian who like all of you care about making sure that we provide school safety. And that's what we talked about this morning. We had a great conversation, and Chairman Irwin, members of the committee, as we all know, members of the Senate, it's good to be with y'all again. We laid out a comprehensive plan that we're interested in working through. We want to work with y'all when that time comes, but it's been well considered. Chairman Irwin has worked along with Chairman Hickman's worked all summer or last couple of years on ensuring we get things right. We've heard from all the voices. I don't think we've left anything, and I know y'all won't through the process here. You'll make sure you hear from all of the voices when it comes to school safety. We'll come up with a plan. We've already have a lot of discussion there, some plans in place that we can make our schools secure and keep our children safe. That's the kind of environment we have to make sure education occurs. We want to make sure that that all of our schools is what we want to do, and we're going to do this, ensure that our schools have the ability to receive critical information. I think that's the communications part of this is certainly very, very important, and information, and in a timely manner, Mr. Chairman. We've discussed that on many different occasions. We also want to ensure that we protect the mental health of the students on an individual basis, and certainly as to how that mental health is protected when it comes to the whole. So we'll make sure that we continue to do just that. I know our amended budget has dollars in it for funds. There's certainly the budget to continue to bolster school security, the infrastructure, working with our local systems to give them a lot of input into where those needs may lie. So we believe that that's part of this discussion, is work closely with our local governments who are closest to the issues, so we believe and know their facilities the best. So I'm very much encouraged that we will take many steps of solving to make sure our young people go to school, their parents leave them there, they're safe, so they're in an environment where they're able to learn without having any concerns about their safety. The second, Mr. Chairman, if I may venture into another subject, and that's literacy. I know the members of this committee, and I know you two gentlemen, and a lot of you, and Representative Ballard, I know you've been a big part of this discussion the last couple of years, is to make sure our literacy needs are met with our children. We all understand, it goes without saying, but I will repeat it. I think about 60% of our children aren't reading on with proficiency when they leave the third grade. It's unacceptable, and we want to join with all our partners in education, all of our partners in education, to make sure we solve that issue. I believe we can do that. I know that we will solve that issue because it's important to our future, not just each and every individual, but to the future of our state, which we all know is the best place to live, work, and raise a family. We've heard that before, but if we don't solve this one, then we'll have problems that stay with us for a long time. We'll continue to take all of the techniques. I trust these two committees to come up with a plan and understand every tool we can use to bolster our literacy rates in Georgia. Because I come from down in South Georgia. Some of you come from metro counties right here in Atlanta, some from Columbus, some from Warner Robins, Maracus, and certainly in North Georgia. It's important that every part of this state, Senator Hatchett, every part of this state, it's important to our well-being. I want to thank you all in advance. I know we'll get this job accomplished. And I'm very proud to be a part of this General Assembly because it's time, and we're going to take some action, get some things done. Mr. Chairman, thank you for letting me be here, and I very much thank you and look forward to partnering with all of you to make sure we solve a problem here in our state. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for punctuating this efforts that we absolutely have to do in this state. We don't have another option, and we must succeed with safety and literacy.
No pressure. My wife has told me we have to solve this problem, so Ms. Dale has said it's something we have to get solved. So it's an opportunity, y'all. We can get this right. As I see the bright minds across this panel from both chambers, I feel very comfortable we'll take meaningful action this year. Thank you, sir.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.
This joint session here, I do want to point out, I'm going to take liberty as chairman, that we're very proud that the speaker would come in here and show his desire for our success, members, at least House members. Just very, very happy to see that and the backing that we have from his office. I also want to point out that my senator was late to this joint meeting. He happened to sit right next to me, so I'm taking liberties here. But let's begin with our program today. As we said, both of us, we've got these three goals. And we're going to start with safety, number one, in this state, and that is to secure the environment around our teachers and our students. So we're beginning today by bringing in some agencies to report to us. I want to state, everyone, that we have been meeting with all of the agencies across the board in the state with trying to solve this problem of safety within schools. And every agency have been absolutely fantastic at responding to us. And that would be Chairman Hickman and myself in the meetings and where we've been traveling around. What I've asked today is GEMA. Where are you, GEMA? Why don't y'all come on up to the front, Linda, if you would, up here. And who else do we have from you, Linda? Are you up there by yourself?
Well, if I may invite Justin Hill from
Yep.
Georgia Department
Justin Hill, please, from DOE, come on up here next to her. Is Commissioner Tanner with Behavioral Health in the room yet? I know he's coming. We'll put him up when he gets here. He had informed me that if we put these groups up together, he'll be here at 2 o'clock. Okay. Well, we'll get him up when he gets here. But we would like you two, we're going to turn the floor over suddenly, and I'm sure these are House members asking questions down there. Who's number 5?
Right here, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank everybody for doing this, but I do want to, if you don't mind, clarify one point that the meetings did not include, it was not us. I know there were a number of meetings that happened over the summer that did not include any Democratic representatives. So if we ask additional questions because we were not included in these meetings throughout the summer. So I just wanted to say that on the record, but we look forward to working with everybody now that we're all together.
Okay, let me get your microphone on there for you. If you would, both of y'all introduce yourself to the committee here, and then we're going to turn it over to you, Linda.
All right. Thank you, sir. My name is Linda Criblay. I'm the Deputy Director of Homeland Security with the Georgia Emergency Management and Homeland Security Agency.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Justin Hill, the Deputy Superintendent for the Office of Whole Child at the Georgia Department of Education.
Great. We'll turn the floor over to y'all.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you, Chairman, for this invitation. It is a true honor to speak to this group of lawmakers dedicated for years and years to school safety. And I did want to invite my colleague and friend, Justin Hill, who we work with every day for school safety. We are so proud at GEMA Homeland Security to have been entrusted by this group to do so much towards school safety in Georgia. You've given us statutory authorities to provide schools with school safety, education, technical assistance, and in 2023, passage of the Safe Schools Act. I can go into a lot of detail about that, but we worked very quickly to make sure we had mechanisms in place for the schools to provide their school safety plans to GEMA Homeland Security for approval, for the intruder alert drill reporting, and for the school safety and anti-gang endorsement. And I would emphasize that endorsement in particular was a partnership. You're going to hear me say partnership a lot because we're not going to move the needle on school safety in the state without working together. That endorsement was a product of GMA curriculum, Godot curriculum, CJCC, and GIPSTIC. But I wanted to provide you an update today on where we stand. At the direction of Governor Kemp, school safety has been the #1 priority for our Homeland Security Division. We have 10 sworn law enforcement officers, post-certified, that are distributed throughout the state that work almost exclusively on school safety. They are in our schools every day providing the training that I talked about, providing assistance on exercises, drills, assisting with in audits and assessments, and most importantly, building relationships in our 159 counties. They work with everyone in the schools, from the superintendents and principals to the bus drivers and custodians to our SROs and teachers. And because of that team, I feel very confident today talking to you about the state of school safety in Georgia. In addition, we have a school safety intelligence unit that analyzes and collects threats in the state and then provides warning information to schools and to law enforcement. And again, all of this work is done in partnership with our other state agencies. So on September 4th, 2024, this state and Barrow County tragically lost the lives of Mason, Richard, Kristen, and Christina, and that's what brings us all here today. I know that everyone in this room shares the passion that we have to make sure a tragedy of this kind never happens again in this state. After a tragedy so horrific, decency, common decency would suggest that we wouldn't see another school safety threat in our state. But in fact, the opposite happened. In the first quarter of the 2024-2025 academic year, GMA Homeland Security received 214 school safety threats. In the previous year, during that same time period, the number was 20. And it's important to note that there's no legal requirement for law enforcement or for schools to notify us of school safety threats. That's born out of the relationships that we have with the schools. So we estimate that those numbers are much higher. Threats at schools are not limited to the existential threat of active shooters. Gangs are an enormous and growing problem within our schools. According to a 2024 survey by the Georgia Gang Investigators Association, 155 of our 159 counties have gang members or their associates in the school system. It's staggering. Human trafficking, drug usage, and mental health challenges are also very present in our school. In short, predators that exist in our society of all stripes are targeting children at younger and younger ages in order to ruin their lives before they even get started, put them on the wrong path. And it's our responsibility to help them and put them on the right path. Turning back to the active shooter problem, I firmly believe we can take a tremendous step forward beyond what we've already done in the state to improve school safety with two fundamental programs. And they were outlined in the speaker's proposed legislation, but they're already programs that we're working to implement at GMA Homeland Security with our partners at Godot. Number one is information sharing. So let's talk about that a little bit and why it's so important. So in the aftermath of every school shooting and every mass casualty attack that exists in this country, reporters come in after action reports happen, and invariably people say, we saw it coming. There were signs that person was going to become unhinged and hurt someone. So why do these attacks keep happening? the way I look at it, it's the 9/11 problem. So I come to GMA from a 25-year career in the Central Intelligence Agency. Justin comes from a military background. I worked in our CIA's Counterterrorism Center before, during, and after 9/11. One of the primary conclusions of the 9/11 Commission is one of the fundamental reasons 9/11 happened was that federal agencies were not sharing information. They were not collaborating, and they were not using their full resources. The same is true on school safety. And I believe that this is a problem we can solve. As I mentioned this morning at the press conference, people have been studying this issue for a long time. The Secret Service, the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, academic experts, and the combined conclusion of all of those experts are that these kind of tragedies are absolutely preventable because the individuals that carry them out show signs that they're on a pathway to violence. But nevertheless, we do not, as a nation, let alone as a state, have a systematic statewide system to collect that information and analyze it and to do something about it. Quite simply, we're not collecting the dots, so we can't expect our superintendents and sheriffs to connect the dots. The information is not available to them. Many of our counties do have robust information sharing systems in place. They're working very, very well. I could list a number of them. We've also created incredible see something, say something culture in Georgia. The GBI See Something, Say Something app is working very well. The problems with these systems is that they don't communicate. Members of the public, parents, students, teachers will report a problem, and I guarantee you that the responsible agencies take action on those tips. But then it ends. It's not shared. It's not collected. And if the right decision isn't made at that time, the problem festers and grows. So this is a solvable problem. It is technologically possible for schools and law enforcement to have agreements in place and information sharing systems in place on school threats that satisfy FERPA and HIPAA laws on privacy. It is essential in this modern era that school administrators, law enforcement, and other public officials have this information to protect the whole of society. Will this be easy? No, it's going to involve a lot of lawyers to figure it out, but it absolutely, as the speaker said this morning, can be done. So I'll talk about our second priority, Behavioral Threat Assessment Management Program. So that's a big word. I have flyers in your handouts about what that means. So we call it BTAM. It's a proactive approach to identifying, evaluating, and mitigating the potential for violence posed by individuals within an organization or community. So about 3 years ago, GMA really dove into this. We met with the Secret Service, we met with the FBI, we worked with DHS CP3 program, and we also used some of our grant funding to hire academic experts who included Dr. John Horgan of Georgia State University, who collaborates with and works with the National Security Council and the FBI, as well as Dr. Gene Dysinger, who was responsible for the after-action report of the Virginia Tech shooting. We put together a BTAM instruction program. Dr. Dysinger wrote for us a BTAM practitioner's guide that was based on best practices of all of those agencies. And we've started rolling this out. We have been laser focused on promoting BTAM programs in our K through 12 communities. It's been a ground up approach. Where GMA is a by request agency, we've made this training available and to the schools, and a lot of them have taken up on it. We have a 1 hour overview course to get people's heads around the concept. We've trained over 1,000, close to 1,300 school officials and law enforcement officers on the concept of BTAM. Then we have a longer 6 hour program for schools that want to implement that program. So we are in about 40 different counties right now, and there's 8 school systems that are using our model, have it in place, and are doing good things with that work. So we're really excited about that. Last year, we dedicated a full-time position to targeted violence prevention. That's our Homeland Security, Dave Shanks, who many of you in North Georgia might know. It is his full-time job to spread BTAM training around the state. I do want to comment that GMA Homeland Security does not have a monopoly on this concept. As I mentioned, this is the result of the work of federal agencies. Many of our counties have their own BTAM programs in place. We think that's a great thing, but by no means are these programs yet statewide. They are not. We have a lot to do. So, just to wrap up my opening remarks, at GMA Homeland Security, we do not see school safety as a static problem. The dangers impacting children are growing by the day and are impacting younger and younger students. We're staying current with those threats and developing new curriculum, new strategies to tackle them. You have our commitment that we will continue to keep focused on this matter. And I share with you that we owe it to Appalachia High School and this entire generation of students to make schools, once again, a place where they can feel safe and be safe and concentrate on their education and their literacy. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions that you have.
Let's do this first. Mike, let me do this first before we jump on questions. Let me let DOE talk. Mr. Hill, why don't we turn over to you, and then we'll allow questions at that time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. While GMA has primacy over school safety, it doesn't mean the department doesn't have a major and role in helping schools build their capacity. So one of the things that State Superintendent Woods did in 2019 was stand up this office to begin with. And in the Office of Whole Child Supports are 3 lines of effort. School safety is one. The other one is student health and wellness, and the other one is something called PBIS and MTSS. It's a framework to approach improving school climate. And through those lines of efforts, we help build capacity. But the biggest thing that we do is really work in kind of a hand-in-glove relationship with GMA to help schools build that capacity to address it. We have a very small grant-funded team and lines of effort, and there's a packet in front of you in a folder that kind of details the activities that we've done, some independent to help build some training and awareness in various efforts, but some other areas, and I would namely actually point out to something called the Ready Georgia Seal of Preparedness, which is an initiative that Mr. Woods launched a couple years ago, where we went over to GMA headquarters and whiteboarded really a strategy of how can we encourage schools to take a preparedness mentality. It's a very stringent application process. It's voluntary, so there's no code that says they have to participate in this, but it's really representative of how GMA and DOE work together to encourage schools to apply. And to date, this is our second year. It's pretty stringent. Again, we had almost 500 schools apply this year. We hope to see 200 schools meet that criteria, but we're in the process right now of reviewing those applications. Last year was our inaugural year. We had 186 applications and 49 schools meet it, but I think that's what we want is a stringent process, something that's, but it speaks to preparedness and prevention mentality. Besides that, we collaborate in course development to make sure that our educators are provided courses. We've launched joint webinar series for educators, so GMA and DOE will jointly present to school officials. So it really speaks to the confidence when district administrators see GMA and DOE together, co-presenting on efforts to do that, for whether it was the school security grants and how they can spend their funds or how they can participate in this. Even the BTAM training that she talked to, we actually incorporated that into this application to help promote more districts to participate in the training.
Great, thank you, Mr. Hill. Let's do this at this time, committee members. We're going to stick to a strict timeline, because as I've told you, we've got a hard stop in here as there's a committee coming in behind us here. But I'll open it up to the members for questions. First I see is number 26. Who is that? Representative?
I just want to say thank you, and as a past educator, I got to work with GMA quite a bit on site analysis, things like that within the school and other things, and you guys answered on the first ring and were there when we needed you. So nothing's changed. I've been out of education 4 years, but I appreciate what you guys do, and I really appreciate the partnership you just mentioned with DOE and GMA. I think that's long overdue. I'm not sure if we had that a few years ago, so if that's happening now, that's even better. But thank you.
Great.
Thank you,
Next
sir.
one, who is number 15? Senator?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you guys for being here. And I do have a question specifically about the tragedy in Appalachia. I wanted, and if it's still too sensitive to talk about this, then I respect that. Appreciate your discussion around using tools that we have better, coordinating better. Are we at a place yet that we can look and see, given what we knew, we perceived things we could have done something about, and then given what we knew, are we to a place we could say we should have done something? I mean, do we have a sense of that in that specific case? Because my concern is, you have these lone wolf circumstances. What's the threshold at which you say, this kid's been showing some signs, some trouble, but we're actually going to engage and do something. It's a very delicate question. Did we see things in Appalachia that we perhaps should have done something about, or are we still trying to tune our ability to perceive and see things to get us somewhere that we just aren't right now?
Well, thank you for that question, and I'll answer it with the caveat that I'm not part of any after action, so I can give you my opinion on the matter. So the number one most important answer to your question is that the first time GMA Homeland Security heard the name, and I will not say his name, of the juvenile shooter at Appalachia was after he had conducted his heinous act of violence. That piece of information was not shared with GMA Homeland Security, which has statutory responsibility for school safety and threats. That speaks to what I was talking about, that we have individual mechanisms, information gets passed, but it's a single point of failure. If people don't make that right decision, and I'm not here to point fingers at anyone, people made the decisions they made with that information, but it wasn't shared with other people. And as I understand it, Barrow County was in the dark as well. So that's why I think it's just so incredibly important that we build upon what we have. What we have is good, but it is not where it needs to be.
So you're saying things teachers see to be reported, even if it's not something maybe that seems urgent at the time, like fine tune our radar is what you're saying, and get that passed to the system?
Right, exactly, sir. Thank you. And the beauty of these BTAM teams is that it takes some of the responsibility off the shoulders of our already overworked teachers and administrators. So they see a troubled youth, they feel that they need to say something about it. Well, now you have a BTAM team that can do something about it. These BTAM teams are cross-disciplinary. They're always local rule. I should emphasize that they will be at the discretion of the superintendent. But that superintendent can bring into the team mental health counselors, law enforcement, anyone who touches the life of that child, so that there's a group of experts looking at the issue instead of just one person. That's just too much weight to put on our educators.
Thank you. Let me state this, Mr. Hill. As you know, those of us been in education, we understand the acronyms and the PBIS intervention systems and all, but do you mind telling us, because you mentioned that in your presentation, what it stands for?
Sure. Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports is something that was launched at the agency in 2008. In fact, I was on that original launch team. And what it is, it's a prevention mentality towards school safety. Actually, it's more school climate. It's a path towards school climate, where you ask yourselves, what should schools be doing, not reacting to? And so, do you have a process of which you would refer students to the office? Is the staff universally on board with that process? Do you have a way to teach students the right behavior instead of just expecting the right behavior and waiting for that misbehavior to occur, then react to it? Do you teach it? Do you model it? Do you acknowledge it when it's done correctly? Have you formed a team that looks at your data monthly and says, hey, are these things that our school can take action on and promote better behavior? And so I think over the years, we've had 1,600 schools that we've trained, representing about 60% of our school systems. And again, it's a well-researched framework to improve school climate.
Great, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna turn it over to you for a moment.
Thank you, and a great presentation, Linda and Justin. Thank y'all so much for being here. Two quick questions. Linda, if you would, you mentioned that we've had 214 threats in the 24-25. Go from the weakest threat, if you could, to the highest threat. What kind of range of those? Are those just like, I'm gonna beat you up this afternoon after school type threats, or what?
Thank you for the question. The type of threats we collect are what we call validated threats, where the school is significantly concerned about a life safety issue. It involves bringing a weapon or a bomb threat. So it's not your bullying or someone got in a fight. It's threats of that nature. And there's some for official use only documents that I could provide this committee. I didn't bring it to an open meeting, but we can provide that to you so you can see what we're looking at. It comes across social media. There's phone-in threats, and there's not a week that goes by that we don't hear about something that raises the hair on the back of my neck up about what's happening in schools. I won't say the name of the superintendent I was going to visit, but I was making a visit to a South Georgia superintendent, and her aide apologized that she had to cancel my meeting after I've driven 3 hours to see the superintendent, because that superintendent was dealing with a stabbing and another incident that involved violence at the school, and she had to crisis manage at that time. So it's a weekly problem.
And the behavior threat management system, you said it's in 40 systems right now. So how long has this been going on?
So we've had it in existence for 3 years. It's really taken off in the past 18 months. And when I say 40 counties, we've trained 40 counties. We don't take metrics on, so people come to the training, they may or may not implement the program in their school, but they have the tools to do that. And then we know of the 8 school districts that are actively using our program. And again, there's counties like Oconee County that had a BTM system in place before we even started thinking about it.
Very quickly here, members, as the Christmas tree light is going, and I'll try my best to get them in order. Number 18, Senator.
Good afternoon. Thanks so much for this presentation.
I'm trying.
There we go. As a former principal, I know the importance of sharing information, so I really appreciate that recommendation. But I'm curious to know if there are any reasonable gun reforms or like storage or anything that you all recommend that we address, considering that is the common weapon that is used in many of these situations. So just curious if you had your druthers or if you have recommendations that we address the actual weapons in terms of guns.
Well, I'll just note that GMA Homeland Security is a part of the Office of the Governor, and so I don't have legislative opinions. He has legislative opinions, and so guns shouldn't be in school, and that's the long and short of it. And so that's how I would answer that question, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Let's go to 17. Is that Representative? Yes.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate your presentation. I'm trying to wrap my head around this system that you've described and what it looks like in practice. You referenced 40 other counties that you're currently working with to get this online. Are there other states, are there other counties that have more widespread usage of this system? What have you learned from those states, good or bad? I know you had originally mentioned, just the burden that this places on educators. It seems like a lot to place in the hands of a small team. In some cases, I'm in Fulton County. We're talking tens of thousands of students and dozens of schools. Is it really, how much of an impact can it have when you're talking about just the scale of coverage that this team in the system is trying to make?
No, that's a great question, and these are challenging issues. A lot of times when a child presents a threat to a school, sometimes it's clear cut and sometimes there's question marks. But BTAM is a fancy word, but we're basically talking about people sitting around a room that are part of the school's safety community already. They're part of, we layer BTAM on top of the existing Department of Education intervention teams which exist, and then we encourage schools to expand that network to other members of the community, to gain insights from law enforcement, to gain insights from animal control. Someone made that point to me the other day, that animal control a lot of times sees things that are relevant to school safety. So it does add to the workload, but it shares the workload. And I would note in Fulton County, I believe all of both Fulton County and Atlanta Public Schools, they're doing good work in this area. They may not call it BTAM, but they're certainly taking a hard look at any student that is troubled and presenting a challenge.
In the data, I know you mentioned not having specific performance measures in Georgia, but as you look at other states, what can we point to and say with some level of certainty that this is actually worth the investment in making a difference?
No, thank you for reminding me to the second part of your question. So several states have BTAM mandates in their state. Florida is one of them. South Carolina is another one. We very recently met with South Carolina and talked to them about their program. So one thing I would note about a mandate, you can have a mandate, but you still need buy-in. And so that's why we've been working ground up and trying to get people's to understand what we're talking about, what this would entail, and identify the resources that they would want to use. Again, this model is based on programs that the FBI Behavioral Analysis Unit has used for, say, people who have been drawn to ISIS. And it's very hard to gather statistics on crime prevention, right? Because, you don't know how many people are truly intent on committing a crime. But these programs have shown good progress in being able to take someone off a pathway of violence and providing positive interventions so that they don't do any of the things that they had talked about doing. And the earlier that we can get to these at-risk students, the better.
Let me do this. I saw Commissioner Tanner. I saw you come in. Would you mind sitting up at the podium? And I'm going to allow one more question here for this to you guys. We'll come back as we have time. We want Commissioner Tanner to be sitting with y'all and be working closely there.
Build my reputation.
Give him a microphone. Thank you. But I said I'd allow one more. Number 19, Senator, I believe you've got a question of this group.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank y'all for testifying. Obviously, this is a big issue for everyone's district, and it's not partisan. One issue that, or something that was brought to my attention in the off season when we're not in session is, and actually Habersham County is trying to become the first county school system in the state to do it. They're going to be a pilot program, but there are these thermal cameras that if someone has a gun in their backpack or in their pocket, the camera can actually pick it up as they're approaching the school. I know they're expensive, but I know Habersham, maybe Coweta, and then some high school stadiums, football stadiums, have installed these. Is there a push or a recommendation from y'all to look into maybe getting these in all the schools? Because I know there's also a push for metal detectors, but those have to be manned. But this technology is out there. I wonder if has anyone approached y'all, or are you familiar with it?
Right. So I'll answer this question and then turn it over to Justin, who had some comments. So we're familiar with this technology. It is not as proven as a metal detector, and our Homeland Security coordinators absolutely would recommend some kind of detection system at any school. But I really think we've done so much on the school hardening issue that I'm more excited about the prevention space and what we can do for children's mental health and to help these kids before they do harm. Because the issue with all of these detection systems, and again, my Homeland Security coordinators would scold me for not saying that we all have to have them, but most of these school threats are from people who have access to the building. So we can have the most robust systems in place, and if a kid is really intent on killing his friends, then he's going to find a way to get a weapon, and if it's not a gun, it's going to be a knife or something else. So I'm excited to see how the technology plays out, but I'm a big fan of a dual approach. And Justin?
I would say that the technologies would certainly qualify under the school security grants funds that were out as equipment purchases. But to echo Linda's comments, that's an important piece. But if you read the most recent Secret Service report that was issued on school violence and school shooters that we've had, one of the things they really point out to is the things that Linda highlighted, and that is a positive school climate where students feel safe to report incidents. I think we've had a number, and actually this is highlighted in the BTAM training she referred to, where students are on record talking about they felt safe to tell their principal or their teacher without repercussions that their friend was thinking about doing these things. And that's a kind of climate we want to foster in our schools, where they feel safe to go to an adult to say, I think there's something bad about to happen. And that really speaks to school climate. And then to the previous question about BTAM, while this is a primary activity, of course, for GEMA, what we help schools do, because we have some limited capacity, is to help operationalize it, show them how it exists within their PBIS framework or their multi-tiered system of supports framework, how it can work in conjunction. And we only do that when we work hand in glove with GEMA to help expand those efforts.
Great, thank you. And a couple of others, buttons are flashing. If we have time, we'll come back to you if that's okay. And we need to see if. Let me talk where I'm on, in case you didn't hear me. So if you would just push your button again, and it'll cut off there for me. Commissioner Tanner, we're going to turn the floor over for your presentation. Would you introduce yourself to the members first, please?
Yes, my name's Kevin Tanner. I'm the Commissioner of the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities.
Great, thank you. The floor is yours.
All right, thank you. I think my team has shared a PowerPoint with you. You should have those slides. I know they have the jump drive if you'd like for them to put it up. If not, we'll just keep going because I know time is of the essence.
We have a copy here in front of us, so if you just work off of it there and
That's
describe
good.
it. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So we are the mental health authority for the state. We primarily exist to serve those who are underinsured or uninsured in the state. I want to thank all of you here for your continued investment in the mental health system. It really started in earnest in 2019. We've had some ground to catch up on, but we're making progress. The chairman had asked me if I would talk a little bit about some of the things our agency is doing around school behavioral health. Also talk a little bit about some of the things we've done in the last few months around a work group that we put together. So all of you, I think, are probably familiar with the APEX program, which our agency oversees. Some of the compelling facts that we work from is nearly 50% of all the children with a mental illness in this country do not have access to care. And that's obviously a staggering concern for us, and especially in many of our rural parts of Georgia. More than 370,000 students in grades 6 through 7 in Georgia felt depressed, sad, or withdrawn at least one day within the past month in statistics, while over 274,000 students reported experiencing intense anxieties, worries, fears during the same period. So we know, and I've got 3 daughters, many of you on the panel have children and grandchildren, and we know it's a difficult and stressful time to grow up in this country and around the world. The numbers tell a very powerful story. Last year, Apex in our schools provided 231,000 services here in Georgia, reaching more than 16,000 students. And obviously, each contact is a positive move toward a healthier child. 6,328 students received Apex services for the first time last year in Georgia. 47% of Apex services were provided in rural areas of the state, 53% being provided in urban areas. So we have a good balance between urban and rural parts of Georgia.
Commissioner, let me
Yes.
ask a question. Would you define Apex for this group?
Yeah, so Apex is a clinician who is placed in the school system. They're a licensed clinician, and they have the ability to bill Medicaid, bill private insurance, and it would be no different than being able to take your child to a clinician outside the school system where they'll receive counseling services, et cetera. The difference here is the person actually works in the school building primarily. So that's taking and meeting people where they are, because unfortunately a lot of these young people with their family situation, they don't have access or the ability to seek that care outside the school building. Yes, sir, thank you. And again, Apex is designed to meet children where they are, and it's a 3-tier approach. 80 to 90% of students receive universal prevention, and this is training and education for the whole student body, the people in the building, that type of thing. And then intensive care in 23 and 24 school year, Apex not only responded to over 1,200 student crises that occurred in Georgia, but it also helped more than 1,500 students successfully reach treatment goals, and that was a 40% increase over the previous year. So that has been very valuable tool for us here in the state. 81% of caregivers reported that their child is now better than they were before the Apex interaction. So what I like to tell folks about Apex, because Apex has been criticized in certain cases, and the reason it's been criticized is because it's oftentimes not available. When an Apex clinician is in a school system and they're embedded in the school, they've been there for a while, the teachers have trust and confidence in them, the students do, the interaction is extremely successful. But position and staffing is a challenge, as you all know, across all of our workforces. But Apex funded 468 positions for licensed mental health professionals. That included counselors and social workers and psychologists in Georgia. In total, 550 people were employed in this program, but 175 staff members left in the previous year, and that was due to salary, workload, remote work opportunities, et cetera. 550 new employees hired, but again, 175 individuals were turned over. One of the other concerns, obviously, that we have is the current Georgia ratios, 1 counselor to every 432 students, and there's a recommended ratio by the American School Counselor Association of 1 for every 250 students in Georgia. Turnover challenges is our biggest challenge with the Apex program. I also like to remind people that just putting additional dollars in the Apex program will not solve the problem, because we just do not, as a state, have enough licensed clinicians in Georgia to handle the workload. So even with additional funding in the Apex program, we're still going to be challenged, specifically in rural parts of our state, to find a clinician and keep a clinician in our school system. One of the things that we were able to do through some funding you gave through the state budget for the current fiscal year is to start creating some hybrid telehealth programs in schools with telehealth. We have several schools in Georgia that take advantage of telemental health services. That's been extremely successful. And the schools that Blakely County, for instance, I believe is the one that has a facilitator in the school that is not a licensed clinician, but they're just helping to connect students to services. And one of those services is telehealth, and that has been very successful. And that's a way for one clinician to cover a larger territory and for us to cover rural Georgia. So that has been very promising thus far. Also, regional collaboration has been important with the local RESAs who help provide services across our school systems, training, et cetera. So we want to continue to look at opportunities to expand these telehealth opportunities and these partnerships with our local RESAs. The other thing that we're doing as an agency is ECHO training. ECHO training is extension for community health care outcomes. This is a program that we have that you all fund where we're connecting pediatricians with psychiatrists. This is a training program and a connection program because, again, many parts of Georgia do not have a psychiatrist. So this is an opportunity for a pediatrician who becomes the end-all, be-all for a child and a family in many parts of our state. But sometimes they don't know how to deal with a very difficult behavioral issue, and we're able to connect them with the right expert in a different part of the state who may be a child psychiatrist. This has been very successful. We're continuing this training and this collaboration, and we're excited to continue to see this program grow. And it also builds the confidence level of the pediatrician, which is very important, that they feel comfortable being able to take care of some of these situations. We also have mental health resiliency clubhouses in Georgia. We have 18 statewide locations operated by 11 different providers. These serve youth 6 to 21, and these offer a range of services from educational programs, employment support, peer support, family engagement, and social activities. And then we also have 8 recovery clubhouses statewide. And this, of course, is relating to drug and alcohol use, and those have all been very successful across Georgia. I also just want to mention to you, I know most of you have heard this, and I don't want to sound like a broken record. We also run 988, which is a 3-digit national number that's operated here in Georgia for people to call 24 hours a day to receive, to talk to someone and to help link them to services. And this is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, including for youth, et cetera. And the other thing that I think is important that we tried to do over the last couple of years is start to reduce stigma, whether it's in young people or others who are okay asking for help and recognizing it's okay not to be okay. The other thing that I want to mention to you is we're also doing a lot of work around our IDD population. That's our intellectual developmental disability population, who also is in our school system. And we're working a lot, specifically in rural areas, through our APEX program and other programs with that population who may also have behavioral challenges, that we can work with that distinct population. So a lot of work going on in that area. Now, the chairman had also asked me to talk a little bit about a work group that we put together as far as the Behavioral Health Reform and Innovation Commission. We have a work group that's chaired by Will Schofield, who's school superintendent in Hall County. And I don't live in Hall, but if I'm a little biased, I think Will's one of the best school superintendents in the state of Georgia. If you've not ever taken a look at what he's done in that community, I encourage you to do so. He has a very diverse community, and he's done very, very well. The other thing I will tell you is, you were talking about school climate. Will has been able to create a specific program that he's teaching in his school to all of his staff members and students. And we have different levels. I mentioned earlier, we have 3 tiers of supports. The first level on the pyramid, all people in the school should receive that. That is just general information about good mental health, et cetera. And then the next level, tier 2, is group type programs, with the most intensive tier being at the top, and that's that individualized need for counseling, et cetera. He's been able to reduce the need for that most intensive level by 40% in the Hall County school system, and by changing the climate. And Will likes to say, and I agree with this, you can never harden a school hard enough to prevent something from happening. You have to change the hearts and minds of the people inside the building, and he's done a good job with that. So he chaired the group. We had, I know, I heard the senator talking about Habersham County, Murray Kogod, who's an attorney, but he's also runs the school police there, very well known throughout the state for SRO work. He was on the group. We had other school superintendents and other mental health professionals. So they came out with several observations, so I just wanted to mention a few of those to you here today, and I know the chairman have a copy of that, and I'm sure that we can get that to everyone here. But one of the things they pointed out was it's very important for every person in the building and every person who has contact with students to be trained properly on those interactions. That includes bus drivers, janitors, lunchroom workers, everyone in the building. Because oftentimes, and again, this committee pointed out, and Dr. Strop, who works for us in Savannah, was the former Assistant Police Commissioner of Counterterrorism for the New York City Police Department. He is also former Indianapolis, Indiana Police Chief, and his expertise is in school shootings and mass shootings, and he does a lot of consulting work around the world. But one of the things that he talks about is the need that you see two things occurring where, and I know this was talked about earlier, but where the kid is in crisis and they're in and out of crisis oftentimes, and usually in every case someone else knew that something could happen or was going to happen, and that's important for us to be able to make sure those people in the building understand how to respond. And I'll tell you just quickly, my daughter, after the school shooting, my youngest daughter, without me knowing it, scheduled a meeting with me through my secretary, and she's a junior in high school, and she drove herself and her friend to my office, and they had a PowerPoint presentation, and the presentation was about the fact that as a junior in high school, she has friends who tell her about things happening and going on, and maybe they're struggling. And she said, we don't have any resources. I don't know how to talk to my friend. So they had conversations with her teachers, and the teachers said, well, we don't know. So she pointed out to me through this PowerPoint that we didn't have any resources on our website for students or teachers. That's changed as a result of that meeting. We now have a tab with student-teacher resources, and we want to do more to get that word out because young people are concerned about their friends and people in the school, and they just sometimes don't know how to respond, and that's what we're seeing. So that's something important. The other thing that I will tell you is they gave some specific recommendations, and again, I think you all have talked about some of these today, but this work group pointed out that we have a strong school safety plan. They recommended that also include a strong behavioral health piece to that plan, and that be required to be submitted to GEMA as part of that plan on an annual basis. And they also recommended that we have some staff members that can help be a support to GEMA to help review the behavioral health piece of that plan to make sure that it is sufficient, and that there's training that's provided and required for Tier 1 and Tier 2 behavioral health supports through the RESAs. This would involve the community service boards. This would involve others in the community. But again, providing that training. And of course, I won't go through every one of these, but Will's recommendation as a good school superintendent that there should be some carrots attached to that, encouraging some QBE items there, funding, if they agree to participate. So they like to see the carrot instead of the stick oftentimes because, again, it gives buy-in. And then behavioral health threat assessment management training, which, again, I think when I walked in, y'all may have been talking about some of that, and incentivizing Tier 2 skills. And one of the things they also talked about, building on Blakely County and some of the other counties that saw success in this, is in cases where you really could not have that apex counselor or the clinician in the school, there may be a way to create a program where you could have someone in the school that's a behavioral health facilitator that could connect the dots. Because part of the challenge in a school system, teachers are busy, counselors are busy, guidance counselors are busy, and sometimes it's difficult. I know something's going on with Johnny, but I just don't know where to get him to the right services. So I know there's an opportunity, I think, working with maybe the Technical College System of Georgia to create a facilitator position That could be a 2-year program, but it's also something I think we could build on in the industry to be able to get that person to continue their education and maybe become a licensed clinician in the future. And the other thing, which I already mentioned earlier, was lowering the pupil-staff ratios for social workers. That group felt was important to have more people in the school. And a couple last things they mentioned is the behavioral health threat assessment management implementation. They suggested funding a care model pilot program. I know this is something you all are probably familiar with, but it's where law enforcement officers who encounter a child on a call or have an issue with a child on a call, or maybe there's trauma in the home, they can report that to the school system in a way that just notifies the school, doesn't give up any of that information or anything that's private, but it makes sure the school knows, keep a little bit extra eye on Kevin today. Kevin's had some things happen. He needs a little extra supports. And then one of the other things was behavioral health information sharing, how important that was. The superintendent specifically on that work group talked a lot about that and talked about the fact that they need to know who's coming in their buildings, and they need to have a good understanding of who that child is. And that's the work group's recommendation. That work group is continuing to work. They have a strong group there. Again, well-versed sheriff, police chief, mental health clinicians, experts, school superintendents, and others who really represent a cross-section of this community that's involved in the safety and the mental health safety of our schools. So, Mr. Chairman, I tried to go through that pretty quick, so I hope I didn't miss anything, but I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Perfect. Commissioner, thank you. Is it fair to say telehealth in your data is helping some children?
Yes, absolutely it is, and it's reaching schools that we haven't been able to reach in any other way.
Is it fair to say that a facilitator, especially in a rural area, can be helpful to connecting to services?
Yeah, I think that's been our missing link in some of our schools where we, even with Apex, with telehealth, with Apex, where we don't have a physical presence in the school. In the places we saw that, like the one I mentioned, it has been extremely successful. Yes, sir.
Great. We'll allow a couple of questions, knowing that we have another presentation that's here. So since it lit up pretty good, I believe number 13, Representative, you were up first.
Okay, there it is.
It should be on.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I just want to say that I had a couple hundred students here today, and we went over to talk with them, and I was like, we're running, got to get to a meeting, but do you have a quick question? The young lady asked me, what are you all doing about mental health? And I just want to thank you today, even just sharing some of the updates that I can now go back and better answer that question. So I appreciate all the work that you all are doing. That's all I want to say.
Thank you very much for that.
Number 28, Representative.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Commissioner, great to see you.
Thank you.
For folks who don't know, I'm still sitting in Kevin's seat. He's my predecessor and doing great things. But in all seriousness, a question for Jim and then a question for Commissioner Tanner. The number of threats that have been assessed, you used a term, I don't remember it now. I just got my coffee, so I apologize. But I don't know if it was credible threats or identified. Were some of those later determined to be, those kids that were doing false threats, trying to get attention? Because I know we dealt with several of those things. Is that a part of the component of that increase from 20 to 218? I just want to understand kind of is that velocity related to that?
Yes, the answer to that in short is yes. Some of that spike in was copycat and hoax threats, but there were some legitimate threats in the mix as well.
Just as a follow-up, Commissioner Tanner, I know you touched on it. I think in the listening sessions we heard this all across the state. The pipeline to fill those Apex positions, and I think about my 3 counties. One, it seems to be working really well most of the time. One, they can't fill the position. It's been empty for over 18 months when she testified to our committee. And the other one is they have somebody, but they have somebody new every single year, so there's no consistency. Would love to hear at a future date some things that we can do to help those systems identify those shortfalls.
Yeah, I would just say that I think that is reflective of the mental health system in Georgia outside of just schools. We just have a very difficult time in our community service boards, our private providers, our hospitals, our private hospitals, being able to recruit and retain help, because there's just such a demand. I saw Senator Walker earlier, and I expressed how important it was for us to continue to find ways to fix our licensure issues. We have a lady that works for us at the department. She has been licensed in Florida for 14 years as a licensed counselor. And she's been here 2 years, and we still can't get her license. And it's very frustrating when we have such a need and a demand. So anything you all can do to help with that, it will help the entire system. Thank you.
What I'm going to do, I've got some more lit up. We're going to need to go to this next presentation if we can. GEMA, DOE, and Commissioner Tanner, thank y'all for your time. Now, if we could transition into literacy. You want to go with it?
How you doing? Thank y'all. I think I see some familiar faces. Thank y'all for your hard work on literacy. We're gonna go ladies first. Richard, you're gonna be the last one. So if y'all would, we're gonna start with Sarah. And Sarah, if you would please introduce yourself, tell us the agency you work for, and then we'll do your presentation. Now we got, as Chairman Irwin said, we got a hard time at 3 o'clock. So we got 50 minutes, and we'll try to divide that up appropriately. So, Sarah, Richard, if you please start, introduce yourself and tell us who you work for, and give us an update. Thank you.
Yes. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, committee members. I'm Sarah Richards. I'm the Georgia Literacy Coach with the Governor's Office of Student Achievement.
Good afternoon. My name's Amy Dante. I'm the Director of Literacy at the Georgia Department of Education.
Good afternoon. I'm Stacy Lutz. I am the retired Director of Strategic Programs and Evaluations for the Governor's Office of Student Achievement, GOSA, and I am currently working with GOSA as a logistics coordinator and contractor for the Growing Readers Program and with the RESA network on implementation of the Growing Readers Program.
Good afternoon. I'm Richard Smith. I'm the director at First District RESA, and I'm here representing the Georgia RESA network.
Sarah, you'll go.
Chairman, if it would be okay for me to let.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay, Amy.
So I'm going to switch off to Sarah very quickly, but we are just bringing you today a very high-level overview of what's happening right now in literacy in Georgia. And so we work very closely together on some different projects, and we're going to try to give you a high-level overview, but we are intentionally keeping it short so that we can give you time to ask questions, and we'll do our best to answer those questions for you. And so I'm going to turn it over to Sarah, who's going to talk a little bit about the work of the Georgia Council on Literacy and the literacy plan that council has put together for our state.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much again to both of our chairmen and all of our committee members for prioritizing this issue of literacy. It is one that is near and dear to my heart as the Georgia literacy coach, but also as an educator and as a mother, because as you know, it is an essential life skill. So I greatly appreciate the fact that you all have come together, as well as our agencies across the state have come together in support of this issue. I have had the honor of working very closely with the Georgia Council on Literacy. Per Senate Bill 211, you should be aware that we are tasked with improving literacy outcomes and supporting our agencies, aligning our agencies in that work. And I am very proud of the work that has been done. I have to always thank our hardworking teachers and school leaders for all of the work they are doing. But I'm very happy that as a state, we are aligning our state agencies and prioritizing this issue. So in your packet, you will see a little circle, and this is the state literacy plan framework that we have developed as part of the Georgia Council on Literacy. And our chairman here, as well as our Literacy Council Chairman Scott Johnson, have been very vital in this work. But we have made an overarching goal that Georgia will lead the nation in literacy. And we have work to do, but I am confident that we can reach that goal. And so we have come up with a framework of 3 goals to work toward that end, which are every child a reader, every educator prepared, and every community supported. And I think it's important to note that although we've done a lot of great work in our schools, and we're going to focus on K through 12 today, research shows that literacy does not begin when a child comes to school. It begins at birth, long before that. And it's very important that we look at all these pieces in terms of language and literacy development of our students and our children. I want to say that in this creation of this framework, we as a council have worked to go across state agencies, and just as you all are coming together across parties, our agencies have really joined together to prioritize this work. And so I'm sitting here at the table with our Georgia Department of Education, with our RESAs, but also represented as our leadership of the council. We have our university system of Georgia. We have our technical college system. We have our DeKalb Birth to 5 represented. We are working closely with the Deal Center and many other state agencies across the state that have united with us in partnership. And I'm proud to say that the work of the council has we've had more and more of across parties who are looking to join us in this work. And I think that's a sign that we're headed in the right direction. So I will be brief today, and I will hand it over to our Director of Literacy for the Department of Education to tell you about the excellent hard work that our teachers and school leaders have been doing in the implementation of 538.
Thanks, Sarah. Sarah's right. I really like to say that Georgia is at our moment of lift, because it feels like we have all of the arrows going in the right direction, and we're getting to this point where the forces that are pushing us up are overcoming the forces that sometimes pull us down. And so if we can continue working together on this hard work of literacy and ensuring that every child learns to read and learns to read well, we're going to be well on our way. And so I don't have to tell y'all about House Bill 538 that was passed a couple of years ago, or some of the other legislation that happened after that, Senate Bill 464. But I do want to tell you that we are doing the hard work right now of implementing those laws. And so I talk about House Bill 538, the Georgia Early Literacy Act, having 5 major components. And 4 of those 5 components live in that K through 3 space and at the Department of Education. And Superintendent Woods, since I've come to the department, has always been very clear that our mission is to support the work that is happening in districts. And so we've been working hard at the department to support the work happening in districts. Sarah told you a little bit about our framework for the state literacy plan, and part of that framework is Every Child a Reader. And so the three components from the Georgia Early Literacy Act that are part of Every Child a Reader are high-quality instructional materials for teaching reading K through 3, universal screeners, which you've heard a lot about, and we have now narrowed that list of universal screeners for next year to up to 5. Those screeners meet the requirements for House Bill 538 and Senate Bill 48, our dyslexia legislation. And probably the most important point of those is the tiered reading support plans that have to be in place for students who are struggling. That's the purpose of all of those other things. That's the purpose of having our teachers armed with high-quality instructional materials, of having data to drive instructional decisions so that when a child is struggling, we can do the right things to put the right interventions in place to move that child along the continuum of literacy. I'm really excited about all of the things that are in place to support our districts in that work. You've got a little one-pager in front of you, and I'm not going to go through all of those points. You all can read those things. But we are proud of the work that is happening to implement these important points. Sarah also talked about Every Educator Prepared. I'm not going to talk much about pre-service teacher preparation because our partners at the University System of Georgia and the Georgia Professional Standards Commission are handling that part. But I do want to talk a little bit about professional learning in the K-12 space because that's going to connect directly to what Stacy is going to talk to you about. All of those components that I just talked about, high-quality instructional materials, universal screeners, and tiered reading intervention plans, those things all require robust professional learning. We also have new K through 12 English language arts standards that will be implemented next year. That requires robust professional learning. The Georgia Early Literacy Act also requires professional learning for all of our K through 3 teachers. Professional learning is a heavy lift right now. And we've got to make sure that we're doing a really good job with every piece of that professional learning. And so a tight connection to professional learning is providing support for that professional learning in the way of literacy coaches. And so Stacy's going to talk to you about our 3-pronged approach to literacy coaches as they exist right now in Georgia.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you for having us again to talk to you about literacy in Georgia and our efforts around that. What Amy just talked to you about is the need for high-quality professional development paired with all of the other pieces of this puzzle that we're trying to put together in Georgia. So we have high-quality instructional materials identified. We have universal screeners identified. We have teacher preparation programs being more consistent, being stronger, continuing to improve that pre-service work that we need teachers to come into the building with. And what Amy just alluded to was that then we have to also support teachers at every phase of their professional career with professional development. And professional development really gives teachers a sense of knowledge and understanding of core components, core concepts, pedagogy around how to give instruction effectively in the classroom. Unfortunately, we all know that sometimes knowledge and understanding doesn't translate to effective application of that understanding. And so what makes classroom practice difficult is not just that we understand what we need to teach and how, but that we can actually apply that in a classroom with children. And that's why coaching is so critical to the effective instructional application within the classroom for literacy instruction. So it's taken all that knowledge, all that learning, all that preparation that a teacher's had, and then pairing that with highly effective, experienced coaches who have done that work, having those coaches sit side by side with a teacher or sit side by side with a principal to coach through structures of a school. So there's a differentiated approach to that, and what you see in your handouts is where we are right now in Georgia with that 3-tiered approach to coaching. We have 63 coaches with the Let's Read Georgia team, which is RESA-based and RESA-delivered. But that is a really differentiated approach to coaching that serves a school and district based on a needs assessment that RESAs have done with their own individual service area districts. So that's a really high-level analysis of what a school or district would need. And so those 63 coaches are really coaching at a high level and giving schools and districts what they need relative to, again, that really high level identified need. Then you move into the next tier, that's 60 coaches who are based at DOE who serve our federally identified CSI schools. Those are our schools in Georgia that have the highest identified needs. So that entire school really needs intentional directed support. And so these 60 CSI coaches are actually are paired with an individual school. So each one of the 60 works with a single one of the 60 identified CSI schools. And that coach is on site with teachers, with administrators to really dig into what are the needs of this particular school relative to not just instructional content, but instructional structures at the school. And I know we have a former principal in the committee with us, so he would tell you, I think, how important those structures are and the expectations set in a building are not just the content knowledge or the ability to apply, but we also have to have school level structures in order to make that application effective. And then we have 32 coaches with the Growing Readers program, which is also a RESA-based system, but it's a universally delivered system of paired professional development, which we talked about, that then has coaches who are assigned to a particular cadre of teachers that really work on skill and strategy development at a much deeper level around that targeted instructional approach from the professional development. So as you can see, there's a really differentiated approach based on the district and school needs that we've identified primarily through our RESA network because they have the closest contact with those individual schools and districts. So if you flip over to your next page, what you'll see is a more specific breakdown of each one of those systems. But what you see in the center bottom of your slide is what is common among these three. And this is what we feel like is really important relative to this three-tiered approach, a comprehensive approach within the state of Georgia. All of these systems have a common vision based in our state literacy plan that the council is working on, that Sarah talked to you about earlier. And that common vision is critical because we all have to be working toward the same end. We have to have the same playbook. We have all the arrows moving in the right direction, even though that support is differentiated. And then you see we work around common standards and frameworks, both in not only ELA content and reading and literacy content, science of reading content, but also around a consistent coaching framework, which has been identified by the Georgia Professional Standards Commission as part of a coaching endorsement. So all of us are also working with a consistent framework for not just the content, but also for the coaching. And then that last bullet, you'll see a differentiated approach to support, but we're also all committed to a consistent framework for evaluation of those programs and those systems with the idea that we'll use some common metrics relative to appropriate metrics for each one of the systems. So as you can see, we could talk about the differences there if you have questions about each one of those tiered programs. And then also we can talk about what makes each unique and how we target that. But I'm now going to turn it over to Richard Smith.
Stacey, if you would please, as Chairman Irwin said, tell us what CSI is.
Comprehensive support.
And that is the bottom 5%.
That's right.
Of schools in Georgia.
Mm-hmm. And those are identified through DOE and served through DOE federal.
Federal funds. Okay.
That's right.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Richard?
Thank you for allowing us to come today and share a little bit about our what we've got going on for literacy across our state. It's been said multiple times that this approach is geared towards reaching all of our kids. We want to make sure, as Sarah said, every child a reader. That means every child across the state of Georgia. So as has been said, the program we have a program that's gearing towards our most critical needs schools right now, where they've got one person in that school every day working with them. We've got the program through Growing Readers that is working to help teachers advance and improve their skills, make sure that they have the right content knowledge, make sure that they have those coaching skills that they need. And then you have the Let's Read Georgia program that comes in and picks up all the other schools there based on where they are. Some schools are farther down the track in this process than others. Some schools aren't ready to dive right in and go. They've got to have a lot of the professional learning that you've heard so much about today. And then we help them put those structures into place so that they can get to where they need to be. The three agencies that are represented here and the council members, we began meeting regularly earlier in the fall, back in the 1st of December. And part of that was so that we are putting together a comprehensive program and that we are meeting the common needs of what these schools have. Through that, we came up, as you've heard, the common coaching standards was something that all groups agreed on to use as their framework. We all agreed that this work has to be based in the new ELA standards and the science of reading, so that all teachers across the state are hearing the same message and that they're getting the same deliverables as they go through this process. It was mentioned by Ms. Denny that this has been a really big year for professional learning. A lot of training has gone on across the state from all agencies around the science of reading, making sure that our teachers are up to speed, making sure that they are pinpoint on the content that they need and what is proven through research to work. What our hope is that we can meet each system where they are and then take them forward. And in the end, all students are reading on grade level in the appropriate time. The intentionality of the way this program's, each one has been set up, serving the specific needs that they are, but all working on that overarching framework. I've heard former superintendent in Gwinnett County, Alvin Wilbank, say many times, there are two types of educators in a building. There are those people who are teachers who work and sit face to face with those students day in and day out. And then there's all the rest of us who support those teachers. Our job is to remove barriers and supply resources for those people to do. And that is the effort that we're engaging in right now, making sure that those teachers are well supported, that they are well trained, and that they have the resources that they need to meet this challenge that we have set before us. So, Chairman, I know we're running short on time, but we can stop there and ask for questions and answer anything else that anybody might have.
Thank y'all so much. Yeah, we have some questions, and it's like Chairman Irvin said, all of a sudden started blowing up. Okay, so I do remember number 15 was blowed up first. Senator Stetson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate you guys being here today. First of all, thank you. I do believe we're working on the right problem. That's sometimes you struggle. What problems are we focusing on? I think this is the right problem. My question to you is, 15 years ago on this very panel, there was a lot of discussion about high school graduation rates. High school graduation rates went up, but as I talk to principals and educators, I think they tell me off the record with no names behind them, they tell me that standards kind of lag to make that happen. What do we need to do here after we put the resources on this issue that we're putting on it? How do we safeguard the standards of what it means to read as a third grader and not let there be sort of an erosion of standards? Because as soon as we start to focus on this, the word's going to get around. Counties are going to start to feel a little bit, school districts, chambers of commerce are going to feel a little bit sheepish. Wait a minute, why is our county reading at this level and others are showing progress? How do we safeguard the standards of what it means to read as a third grader and not let that slip? And is NAEP going to do it for us? Is that the standard? What's the standard we're using, and how can we keep that standard from changing?
I'll say this first. I think it's just like what we've done with the legislation so far. We've set a specific criteria of what we want these teachers to be able to do with these children in the classroom. I think that the same standard needs to be set of what constitutes the ability to read at third grade, and set that and hold to that.
So what is it the NAEP test? My concern is individualized, I'm not being ugly, but individualized criteria that's contextualized for the district and their needs. That sounds a lot to me like different standard. We're not loving kids if we're not holding them to a real standard. And it just seems, because we don't want to let educators not feel validated or professionally judged or whatever, standards kind of crawfish a little bit on you when we need to have a hard line that we can push to and put resources to. What's the standard?
So I'll let Amy address the standards and the assessment. I think one of the things that's critically important is that when we talk about differentiated support, we are not talking about differentiated standards or levels of success. What we're talking about is the ability to reach teachers and schools where they are, to set up success models so that they can actually reach that standard that's established. And part of that is really being able to coach into a classroom teacher's practice or school level administrator's practice or district coaches' practice around what is effective instruction and how do we make that happen in the classroom. So we're not talking at all, and Amy, I think you'll address this, we're not talking at all about the standard moving, we're talking about the support for reaching that standard improving.
And so I would say, I would be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit here about Georgia's new K-12 ELA standards, which we're learning about and developing resources for right now, but those standards will be implemented next year in all Georgia classrooms and also assessed next year on the Georgia Milestones Assessment System. So if you hadn't had a chance to look at those standards are Georgia grown standards. They were created from committees of stakeholders from all different areas in Georgia, and then were deeply developed and finally approved in 2023. Our ELA team has been working really hard to put those in place. There are some really interesting structural changes about the standards that will allow us to know when someone leaves third grade if they're a proficient reader. There is a domain called the Foundations domain where we talk a lot about the same things that are mentioned in the Georgia Early Literacy Act. That domain covers grades K through 5, and there will be a lot of different data points that we can look at. I'm proud of the fact that Georgia's Georgia Milestone Assessment is highly correlated to the NAEP, and so we're not getting wildly different results between our state test and the NAEP assessment. The NAEP assessment would be one metric that we can look at. We do have an agreed upon state literacy metric that is based on Lexile measures, and some of that work came out of the council's work. And so I think that we will look at multiple different metrics. When you're dealing with children, that's what you want to do. You don't want to base big decisions and make big sweeping judgments just on one metric. But I do believe that our Georgia Grown ELA standards will help hold us accountable to high levels of learning for all students in Georgia. And then I think that we will have varying different metrics, which will show up in our state literacy plan, that help us hold ourselves accountable and then know what kind of support we need to provide for the boots on the ground. Sarah, did you want to add something?
Sarah.
Very briefly, I want to say thank you for that question, and that is part of the question that has been asked by the Georgia Council on Literacy. As far as in the creation of our plan, we are in the process right now of establishing metrics to measure, and that is starting with that birth through 5 area, looking at, we actually expanded our K through 3 working group to now be called K through 12 for the very reason that, we were spending a lot of time and focus on that K through 3, and of course we still are, but we do need to consider all the way through high school, so that's something that we're looking at. And we have our university systems involved, and we're looking at even possibly an adult metric on literacy and how we can consider that big picture. And that will be something that we are reporting on as a council moving forward, and that is in process and being established right now.
Thank you. Let's move to the other side. So we're going to just pick a number. It's like a roulette wheel. Number 25.
You're on.
There I am. Thank you. So on literacy, and I've been having this conversation with my grandkids as well, reading being one thing, but coding literacy is instrumental in our future in the world of AI and cyber. And I know personally for me, that would have been a better way for me to learn to read was through the coding process. I would recommend there's a couple of places. Scratchjr.org starts 5 to 7 years old. Scratch.mit.edu is 8 years old and older. And terrapinlogo.com. These apps is literally helping people create convincing arguments in the world of blocks and creativity with the math science world. And as we learn to read, I think it's also, to me, even more important that we learn to problem solve, because I think that's a lot of times, with all the knowledge that we have now, it's important that our minds, I think our kids are bored. And I think there's a lot of kids that aren't reading because this is maybe the area that we need to be focusing on, because they're using these. And we need to keep up with that. But if y'all will look at that, I think it would be incredibly helpful. In the coaching aspect, I wish there was a way we could create teams that would compete across the state on literacy and find ways. In the mental health, we just went over, like literally mental health professionals that are being taught in some type of career pathways. Let's start creating teams like we do in our sports in other areas that can help us throughout our communities. But that's just my thoughts. But thank y'all for doing all that you do, and look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Great comment. I know many of y'all heard me say my goal one day is to drive into Bullock County and it be Bullock County home of the highest literacy race in Georgia, not the home of the state football champions. Football is important, but literacy is more important. Let's go on. Number 26.
Thank you, Chairman Hickman. Appreciate what you guys do, and of course, Chairman Erwin Hickman and Representative Ballard on literacy. One thing we haven't talked a lot about is the data and kind of the aggregated results, and coming from what a lot of teachers kind of asking me, and where are the numbers at for that special ed population, and how is it compared to the regular ed population? So we see there's a certain percentage of kids in Georgia that aren't on the third grade level yet. How many percentage of those are for those kids with the IQ lower than 70? I mean, you have some kids who are pushed in the classroom this day and age, and they're going to have a hard time reaching that goal. Now, we still you set that goal, that's fine, but it's good to know those numbers so everybody knows exactly what we're comparing.
So I don't have those numbers with me today, but we do have several public dashboards available in Georgia Insights where it's easy to pull that data, and we could certainly get that data for you. And we do know that our different groups of students, there are some groups of students that lag behind other groups of students, and that's one of the things that the Georgia Council on Literacy is charged with looking at. We're charged with looking at those groups of students that may need some differentiated support, some stronger support for getting to the place of being able to read well.
And going along with that, I guess, do you have anything you think of now close to kind of what that would be? And second would be to some of the things you go by, strategies you have, of course, would be lower class size, I would assume, to kind of dive into those kids that are really struggling. Do you have recommendations like that as well for those kids, especially those CSI schools you're going into? Are they we're asking them to kind of lower their class size for reading or language arts, or have that extra period of the day, maybe miss an exploratory or optional class so they can kind of really down home on that extra literacy skills that they need.
So, of course, those are all interventions, and we need varying levels and intensity of interventions to be able to meet the needs of different individual students and different groups of students. And so all of those things, so yes to all of those
Good.
things. And in an actual school where there are real live children, you know, that's the hard work that teachers and administrators and MTSS teams. Mr. Hill spoke a little bit about Georgia MTSS, that's Georgia Multi-Tiered System of Supports. And those are processes that schools engage in to figure out where to begin creating a solution to the problem. And so that starts with universal screening, and then it starts with digging a little bit deeper into that universal screening data to figure out where the actual problem is taking place. And then it's a matter of figuring out, well, what do we need to do to intervene, and where during the school day when we have these children in front of us, where will we be able to do that? How will we progress monitor? How will we know that what we have said we're going to do is actually happening? And so those are all of the things that have to take place. And it would be great if we had little cookie cutters that said, this always works for every child. But the reality is we're working with individual little humans that have a lot of different needs that we have to think about. And so when we're thinking about things that we're going to put in place to solve the problem, we've got to think about things that we're going to do to support those teachers who are having to make thousands of decisions every day to ensure that they're serving children well. And so it is a matter of supporting our children, but it is also a matter of supporting teachers and giving teachers the tools that they need to be successful with that work.
And just to add to that, we talk a lot about metrics relative to student achievement. One of the things that I hope we think about, and I hope that we can really feed into, is that student academic change only happens when teacher instructional change happens and is consistent over time. So the distance between where our student achievement is and the change in student achievement over time is critically tied to our ability to coach and support teacher instructional improvement. And that can only happen in the classroom with coaching support for those effective practices. So the behavioral change has to start with teacher and coaching on those with those teachers. That then will lead naturally to student achievement improvement.
It will. I agree with you. And we have to make sure admin supports that, make sure it's a good classroom environment as well.
Thank you. Senator James.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, panel, because I've been on this committee for a long time and listening to you, and it seems that you're all doing a great job. Excuse my hoarseness. And working together now and in conjunction with each other. I do have a concern about, I was on the governor's mental health commission for many years, and I was on the subcommittee for special education. So I still have a real concern about I visit the schools a lot, and some of the special education needs of the autistic and dyslexic kids being thrown in with everybody else in special ed. Do y'all have any plans on doing some kind of program that would take them out? Because many of them could make A's, but they fall behind because they're in that system together. If you know what I mean, I could probably explain it better. But that's one thing. The other thing that I've been concerned about is, what do you think, have you put something together if we do lose the State Board of Education? Well, how is it, because I know all of your programs are based on monies and grants and different things that funding that's given now. So have we looked at the big picture that might happen in this year too, or we need to do that? Oh, I need to put some legislation in to do it. What can we do?
Well, I'm not qualified to answer that last question. I'm the reading teacher, but I'm sure that there are people probably at all of our agencies who are looking into that, but I'm afraid I'm not the expert on that.
Okay, thank you.
And just to go backwards, though, I think the last question and yours are linked as far as we certainly want to provide supports for all students with all needs, and schools are all working toward that in different ways, but that is part of the council's work, is looking at subgroups, student groups, to address the needs that each of them have and try to make recommendations for what we could do to improve those. And so I know that all of our agencies are working to support all students and make sure that every child is successful. And I do feel that what's in place with the screeners is going to also continue to be very helpful in that, making sure that we're looking at all of our students. But of course, we have to look at each individual child and what they need.
I agree.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative
Thank you, Mr.
23,
Chairman.
number 23, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you all for your panel and all the hard work that you're doing. I have a few friends that are educators, and I have a daughter that's an educator. And she has gone into the dyslexia field, which we know is a huge component of children not being able to read. Reading is two parts. First, they're learning to read, and then they're reading to learn, their comprehension. So I'm just wondering, are you all factoring that aspect in, that there are so many undiagnosed cases of dyslexia? And how are we going to address that? As far as screening, is the state of Georgia screening, or how are we going? Because they're falling through the cracks. I got grandkids that cannot read.
Yes, so Senate Bill 48 was passed in 2019, and it involved a pilot that happened throughout our state, and there is an excellent report on how that pilot went. I call it the second part of Senate Bill 48, which is that universal dyslexia screening that you've mentioned. This is implementation year 1 for that screening. We believe that some of the changes that will happen next year with having 5 universal screeners that meet the qualifications of the Georgia Early Literacy Act and Georgia's dyslexia legislation, that's just going to help school districts to be laser focused on the data that we get from those. We have a screening and follow-up process that we are providing rich and robust professional learning for our districts on how to react when a student, for example, is not responding to an intervention, and we need to dig a little deeper to determine if they indeed have characteristics of dyslexia, and then continue assessing and figuring out what that student needs to be successful. And so, yes, the dyslexia work is tightly connected to all of the other literacy work, and we're really lucky at the department to have Dr. Jennifer Lindstrom from the University of Georgia to be leading that work, and she's brilliant and so helpful to districts, and I learn from her every single day.
Thank you. In fact, we know, Ms. Representative, that 24% of people experience some form of dyslexia, and Representative Ballard is bringing up a bill to actually add the name dyslexia to her bill, Georgia Early Learning Act. Okay. One more question. Number 7, please, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Chairman. Thank you again, panel, for this hearty discussion. I would like to get back to one fundamental issue that I believe is directly tied to really increasing literacy across the state, and that is the resources. So we have a QBE, it's 40 years old, and the weight, there are all different kinds of weights, about 18 different weights, but there is one weight that is not there yet, and that's the poverty weight. So we have children living in poverty, which then prevents this 0 through 5 supporting mechanisms to get students ready for school. And I'd like to see if you guys can even discuss or have us discuss more, because we've dropped bills in reference to trying to get that QBE with the poverty weight, and we're just not getting there. And I think that's fundamentally where we are, especially when you point out that there is Georgia CSI identify elementary schools with the highest need and directed support there. Then why would we not be looking at a poverty weight with the QBE?
1 minute for the answer.
So we know that children from poverty come with special challenges. We know that they often don't come with background knowledge and as large a vocabulary as children who don't come from poverty, and all of those things significantly impact literacy rates. And so certainly we need to be able to have the tools once they get to us so that we can try to address those hurdles.
Thank you. Great conversation. You can tell that this crowd is really into this thing, and we know again that school safety and literacy and policy all work together. And we know if a child doesn't feel safe, they're not going to read. I would like to personally thank Chairman Irvin for putting this together. He and his team is the one that orchestrated this, and what a great presentation y'all have done, the speakers have done, and we just really appreciate so much keeping all of us educated. As a wise gentleman once said, this is Georgia's most solvable problem. Thank y'all. And now the House members need to stay. The Senate members, you're dismissed.
House members, stay around. Just for you four, thank you. Thank you for working together so good. And no House members, don't get up. Just Stacy. Yes, he was serious, y'all. He was serious. Y'all thought he was a kidder. House member. I got 3 more minutes of a meeting. I have 3 more minutes. I see the insurance people there. House members, earn your money. Earn your money. Very briefly. Now they're going to dim the lights. House members, look at your rules. They're in the top of your packet. They're the same committee rules as last year. Look at your rules, same committee rules as last year. If you would look at those. Y'all look. I'm letting you have discussion right this minute. We're going to approve our rules. I will entertain a motion if y'all are prepared to do that. We got a motion by Representative Townsend, a second. Okay, these are our committee rules then. We're going to vote on them. All in favor say aye. All opposed, like sign. Our committees carry, and we'll adjourn the meeting. We do have a dinner tomorrow night. Love to see every one of y'all here.